Good morning, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 meeting of the Municipal Airport Authority, City of Fargo. Before we start, I'd like to have the people off camera introduce themselves. You can start over in the corner, Bernie.
Bernie S. Davis, Rent-A-Car.
Rick Blackspark, Cityscapes Development.
Ryan McAllister, SP Plus.
Ray Pearson, SP Plus.
Jay Hansen, SP Plus.
Terry Stowe, Realtor.
Jordan Bell, Airport Authority. Jeff Klein with Maiden Hunt.
Aaron Anderson, Airport Authority.
All right, thank you. Everybody on the call, can you hear us okay? Respond if possible.
We can.
All right.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. First order of business, approve the minutes of the regular meeting from May 10th. Any corrections? None? Motion?
I'll move.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? None? Call.
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Hagan.
Aye. Moving on to number 2, approve the airport vouchers totaling $191,535.45. Motion, please.
I have a question.
Yes.
On item A, partial, Maiden Hunt partial payment, 46,000, is 46,000 the partial payment?
Oh, that's the individual vouchers, so
Those are, yeah,
we're on number
we're
2.
doing the consolidated.
Oh, you're doing, oh, sorry, okay.
That's fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the airport vouchers.
Motion second.
Second.
Any motion second? Any other conversation? None? Call vote.
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Hagan.
Aye. Moving on to number 3, approve individual vouchers as follows. Maiden Hunt, $46,196.14. B, Maiden Hunt, $2,720.14. C, Maiden Hunt, $1,216.15. D, Maiden Hunt, $5,278.80. Item E, RDO equipment, $286,500. Can I get a motion?
Can I go back to my question?
Yes, please.
So on item A, when it says that's the partial payment, so the 46,000 is what is the total?
The terminal area studies are around 543,000, Jeff, is that correct?
Yeah, right in there.
Yeah, so this is just an advance payment or a payment for what's been earned towards that contract. The same with all of them. So there's a contract in place for a maximum amount, and this is just payments towards that maximum amount.
And then do all the individual, like the engineering services and that's all in that 500?
No, these
all
are separate
separate.
contracts.
Okay,
Yep. I can get those totals for you.
I'd be just curious to see those. Thank you.
I move.
Motion second, please.
Second it.
We have a motion second. Any discussion further? None? Call for the vote.
Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Hagan.
Aye. Moving on to number 4, receive communications from Cityscape Development to renew the listing agreement for East Side.
Okay, so this is just the annual renewal of the listing agreement for East Side Terminal. In place since about 2011, and Rick Foxworth is here if you have any questions, but the building is full other than our former conference room on the second floor that UPS vacated that they'd used for a training room, so I'd recommend your renewal of this listing agreement with Rick. He's done a great job.
Mr. Chairman, do we invite other real estate, commercial real estate firms, or is this just continuing on?
Currently, it's a
It just
continuation.
continues on.
Okay,
Other firms can bring tenants, prospects.
is there any way they would know it was coming up, or that they could do that?
It's in the multi-listing, correct, Rick?
Right, correct.
Any time there's an open space, it's in the multi-listing agreement that all realtors have access to. And there has been on occasion, once in a while, one that will bring one to Rick.
But we're doing the listing agreement, not the individual. If I were a commercial realtor, how would I be notified, or would there be a publication that I could bid for this listing agreement also, or?
There is no.
We had, there was initially back in 2010 or 11.
I know there's not a great deal of money paid out under this, but just as a matter of course, I think it's a good idea to at least publish or invite other firms to take a look at it.
John, what is the annual, if there is a compensation or payment made to the either listing agent or selling agent of a lease, what is the annual ballpark? What is that about, dollar value? I mean, is it under 5,000, under 3,000?
If they find someone, it's
Yeah.
a 6% of the gross lease amount, so, which is standard, I think.
But generally not, it's not a big number. We're not.
No, I'm not saying it's a big number, and it certainly would be under purview in the purchasing policy of the executive director choosing one, but just, you know, that we're a municipal entity that anybody, I don't know if anybody would even bid it, but
What are they bidding?
for this listing agreement, there's compensation paid to cityscapes each year.
Compensation paid each, just walk through the question of the listing compensation only occurs when a new listing happens, correct? Or a new tenant is taken.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And Joan sent me the list of payments under it.
But nothing for renewals, just the initial listing.
Right, it's, do you have that list that cityscapes and paid?
Well, I ran the 11 years and the commissions that have been paid, and it came out to about a little over 11,000.
So there is compensation paid to cityscapes for doing the listings.
For executing a lease.
No, any realtor can execute the lease, and then there's a split of the fees.
They don't get a fee other than if there's a lease.
Right.
If there's a
Yeah.
lease signed.
But the dollar amount is so small, it's,
Yeah, there was one large transaction where they paid $72,000.
To sell the David F. Johnson building in Cass County.
So, no, I'm just suggesting that, just as a matter of course, that we would, on these types of searches, it's not a formal RFP or anything like that, it's just simply that, you know, we're gonna be renewing or.
And what is the length of the listing agreement? 1 year? Okay.
so can we have a motion to approve? I understand what you're asking. The amount is so small and the time forth to,
Mr. Chairman, and I don't disagree, but if there were a commercial realtor that wanted to do it for 5%, we should probably look at that. Now,
that would be great. These meetings are public and they have access to it at any time. to
I'm
see
just saying that just to give the opportunity, I'm not certain that commercial realtors would be reading agendas from the airport authority looking for clients. And there may not even be another one submitted, but just so we would have some publication or notice to other entities. This has been in place for 10 years, 2011, so.
Mr. Chairman, I asked Sean, has there ever been any inquiries about that from other realtors? So it must
Even the
not,
ones that have brought tenants to work
Yeah.
with Rick.
so obviously it's not a great big deal.
No,
Can we get a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
I second.
conversation? None? Call the vote, please.
Lynn?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
no,
Capitan?
Aye.
Heckman?
Aye.
Hagan?
Aye. Moving on to number 5, receive proposal from CMTA regarding East Side Terminal Airport pathogen mitigation.
So this is the next step in the process for what you approved at the previous meeting, to put together a contract now to go through the entire East Terminal building to reduce the amount of airborne pathogens. And the fee is at $34,000, $27,200 for construction documents, $1,700 for bidding and negotiations, and $5,100 for construction administration once a bid would be approved.
Can we get a motion?
So move.
Second,
I'll
Go
second.
ahead.
second conversation?
Done.
None? Call the vote.
Lynn?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Capitan?
Aye.
Heckman?
Aye.
Hagan?
Aye. Move on to number 6, receive change order number 1 for Superior Electric, increase of $2,400. $69 for the west side terminal.
As they were working on the current contract for the west side terminal, they found a duct smoke detector, an existing one that wasn't connected, or there was an issue with that. I guess it's in the documentation that you have there. The unit did not have power and was not tied into the old energy recovery unit, so because of code, they went ahead and got that up to speed in the code. So the amount change order is $2,469.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Oh.
Second,
Second.
call the vote. Any conversation?
No.
So, none. Call the vote.
Lynn,
Aye.
Cosgrove,
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
I just thought it was expensive to throw power to one smoke detector for $2,500.
Did it just power, or did it connect it to the current system?
Connected to the current system and
Moving on to number 7, received communication from Teal Stro regarding an amendment to the owner-architect agreement exit plaza.
so now that you've awarded bids to the exit plaza, now this is the next phase that we typically go through here is to have to do the construction administration and civil engineering portion of it, which they partner with Mead and Hunt, and then all the construction material testing as we move forward with the exit plaza project. Terry's here if you have any questions.
Questions for Mr. Stro? Comments, Mr. Stro? No?
I have a question. When are we gonna start this project?
The first week in June.
Excitedly waiting for that.
Do we need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment.
Second.
Please. Jim, second. Any conversation? None? Call the vote.
Lynn,
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, number 8, received communication from Teal Stro regarding design and construction administration services, security checkpoint.
So this is similar, we did award the bid for the expansion of the security checkpoint. And now that has been awarded, this would be the next phase in that process, along with some of the design work that Terry had done prior to Homeland Security engaging us that we're gonna get the third lane project there. So it does include the design, all of the work that he's done to date for us and for Homeland Security, along with the construction administration as the project proceeds here, and hopefully it's completed by the end of July. So it's a not to exceed contract of $33,050. We did find out yesterday, it's still under conversation that Homeland Security may pick up part of the electrical costs for the existing units that are there. We awarded a bid to, I believe, Superior Electric. Was it Superior Electric or, yeah, and there's a chance that they could pick up a portion of that $33,000 cost, but we'll know more on that, hopefully they will respond to early next week. Yes, we need a motion.
Move for motion.
I move.
Second.
We have a motion second. Communication concerns, anything? None? Call the vote.
Lynn.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to number 9, receive update from SP Plus regarding the parking garage financial feasibility.
So, drive my calendar.
Yeah, thank you. We do have a few slides. I do want to get through it quickly, so we can answer any specific questions you might have about this, and I know some of you probably do. I just want to introduce myself, Brad McAllister, and SP Plus. We manage the parking operations here at Fargo Airport. I've been with SP Plus as regional manager overseeing this particular location, as well as the Sioux Falls location nearby for about 4 years now. I'm transitioning to a different role within SP Plus, so I would like to introduce you to Greg Pearson, who's actually going to be taking over my role as regional manager overseeing the parking operation and USJ's team here at Fargo. Greg brings a wealth of experience. He just joined us a couple months ago, but he actually comes from the airport side of the table, so Sean's side of the table. He was with, and is based in Baton Rouge, and was with that airport for a number of years as both deputy director of aviation, so much like Darren's role here, and then before that, IT director. So if you all have IT questions while Greg's here, you can ask him as well. I do want to ask, because we're talking about the potential to build a garage here and supplement and complement the current parking facilities here at Fargo Airport. And we were asked to do a study back in 2016, what we call a garage feasibility study. And I don't think anybody with the board was here back in 2016. Maybe they had. And what we did was, we used a number of factors to take our best guess, an estimate at what the cost of a facility was, both a 500 space garage facility and a 1,000 space garage facility. We used a couple different financing terms, 15-year and 25-year. Took a look at those costs, projected what revenues would be over time based on some growth percentages in employments and that kind of thing, and tried to determine how long it would take revenues to really pay for the investment in a garage and make sure that it really makes kind of fiscal sense based on some of the other priorities that the airport had going on at the time. And at the time, it was determined that it really was not financially feasible. We're here to tell you that conditions in terms of favorability really haven't changed. In fact, it's gotten less favorable. And in fact, we dusted the study off from 2016 last fall and put in some new data inputs such as occupancy, certainly looking at 2019 parking data and occupancy and travel trends and revenue trends, and plug that into the model. I presented to a couple of the board members and Sean back in November of 2019, it still wasn't making financial sense based on a number of factors that we built into the model. And we actually just recently, in the past couple of weeks, updated it again, and conditions have actually, just in the last 5 or 6 months, have become less favorable from a construction standpoint, materials and supplies, project management, that kind of thing. So with that, I think I'll have Sean just start up the presentation here, take you through a few slides, some of those base assumptions that help us come up with an estimated cost of the facility, as well as some of those factors that we built into the revenue projections.
Can everybody viewing from remote see this on the screen?
Commissioner Strand, can you see it?
Not very well. I can see it on the other end of the room.
Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. We'll working on it. Let us know if you can't hear someone too.
Gotta use your big boy voice.
Okay,
So the
thank you.
microphone can hear you.
Thanks, Eric.
Now can you see it, John?
Oh, watching that.
There, I can see it. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Go.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll just move to the next slide, Darren. So like I said, we really took a look at the cost of building a 500 space garage or a 1,000 space garage. 500 space would really double the amount of spaces you have there in short term currently. 1,000 space garage would, almost quadruple. Facility cost is really estimated, between $42,600 per space and $50,600 per space. So that's quite the range. We use the top end of this, really based on some information we're getting from Sioux Falls and their efforts in constructing a garage, and they are moving forward. The original estimates, and we're talking, about a year and a half ago now, was about $37 million for that facility. That cost since then has gone up to about $50 million, based on a number of factors, supply factors, cost for construction management, scheduling, and that kind of thing, as well as, they're also looking at building a skyway that's going to connect the garage to the terminal building. That's not included in this, $50,600 cost per space, so about $50 million facility, that would add another $5 million. There. So we're really looking at current market conditions and construction costs, and that's really what gets us to that. And as well as, Sioux Falls is dealing with this right now, so we're getting that intelligence, directly from the airport's leadership there on what this cost is really looking like. and applying that to a similar situation here in Fargo. I'll go ahead and flip to the next slide. You see up here what our current rates are for parking and then what our suggested rates are. So currently, we are at $18 in the short-term lot here, and this is before my time, but from what I understand, we set a high rate for that lot because we really wanted to discourage people from parking overnight. That's because we have a limited amount of space there, and we really wanted to make sure there was always availability for meeters and greeters, people who were just coming in for a few hours to pick people up and get out of there. So that's why we typically put the highest rate price or cost rate in the short term, and it's also proximity to the terminal and that kind of thing as well. What we actually recommend is increasing the economy and long-term lot rates slightly. We haven't increased rates here in quite some time actually. And then reducing that short-term rate because we're actually increasing the number of available spaces in short-term. In order to maximize that and optimize that revenue potential, we really want to try to get a larger percentage of potential customers that will use that lot at $15 per space year-round, and not just during the winter months when we expect it would really, the garage would really be used and be full. So just to maximize that revenue potential, that's where we would like to put the rates at. That's what we built into this model in terms of predicting and projecting what our revenue parking revenues would be per year throughout that sort of 15-year finance term and 25-year finance term. We reached out to Baker Tilly, local municipal advisors here in Fargo that the airport uses to get the tax exempt and taxable finance rates to build into this model as well. And I think we can go to the next slide, if you would, Darren. And here, I think I'm going to turn it over a little bit to Greg. Greg did a great job in developing some charts here to give us kind of visualize. Now, what's in front of you there is sort of a document that goes through all of those base level assumptions that we built in determining, and projecting, what the cost would be and what our revenue potential would be over the next 15 to 25 years. And then a bunch of data tables in there as well with these costs. And what Greg's done is a really good job of just putting those tables into some nice visuals here to give us a good overview.
Sure, thanks, Brad. So we're looking at the last 5 years of both ends of the spectrum. There's 4 models, if you will. So we're looking at a 1,000 space scenario, year 20 to 25, if you will, out of the 4 different scenarios. And the main emphasis of this slide is to kind of show you how the incremental revenue changes in that last 5 years until the debt is amortized. And like Brad kind of stated earlier, kind of, took the wow factor off of this entire thing and told you it wasn't feasible on the plan, if you will. And this is the reason why, essentially, because, and we'll show you later on in the presentation, the net cash flow. There's a negative net cash flow behind this, and this is kind of showing you how the garage revenue grows each year, and it's just not growing at the rate that you would need to retire that debt sooner than later. For all these different scenarios, the debt cannot be retired until, the revenue does not grow fast enough to retire the debt before you fully amortize it. So if there's a 25-year loan, if you will, you can't retire the debt until year 25. And so the revenue doesn't get you to a break-even point before year 25. And that's essentially what this is showing. Go to the next slide, please. And the same thing with the 5-year scenario. Year 10 to 15, this is a 15-year debt. You don't essentially get to your break-even point until year 16. And obviously you want to cash flow a garage like this before you get to the end of it. This really resonates with me because coming from the airport side, we actually had to do a garage project in Baton Rouge, and we looked at this for many years. And we kept it on the books because it's a great idea, a great project, but it was all about time. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any adverse effect on the current tenants, on the airlines, or our ability to recruit air service, if you will. And so we had to make sure that the revenue met with the debt. And so one thing we'll talk about towards the end of the presentation as well is, if it's not lining up with it, where are you going to get that money from that you got right now without debt? Right now, you don't have any debt on that service parking lot. So what do you do now that you have debt that you have to account for in order to make sure the airlines and all your tenants still pay a competitive rate?
Did you end up building it in Baton Rouge?
We did. We had to look at all different types of funding sources at some point. But we unfortunately couldn't do it through a financing mechanism. It just didn't.
Yeah, we can't either.
The growth didn't match up with with being able to do it. And we did a 2% growth, we'll talk about, which lines up with what the FAA approved most recently. And then we also calculated what the growth would need to be in order for this to make sense if you fully finance the entire investment.
You see that at the end here.
Go ahead, Darren. Thank you. So just some of these operating expenses that go into the cost of having a new garage facility at your airport. R&M reserve, we reached out, based on some guidance from Sean here to Walker Parking Consultants. They're a consultant that's well known in our industry. We've worked with them on projects in the past. Scott Froming is who we reached out to, and we just asked him, right now, what does it cost to maintain a new garage, and then how does that, what's that affect over time? Back in November of last year when we updated this model originally, he gave us I think 12 to 13 cents per square foot per year maintenance reserve, or really, so that you would build that into the model, and that's how much you would pay for things like concrete repair, the building envelope, sealants, sealers, that kind of thing, over the course of the life of the building. And then actually, we just got an update from him last week, and he said, since November of last year, it's actually gone up 15% more. So he's talking 14 to 17 cents per square foot per year. We just split the middle there, 15.5 cents per square foot per year, and that's what we built in the model on those R&M reserves, repair and maintenance reserves. There's also an incremental operating expense, so you think about the cost on property insurance, lighting, de-icing, some of the other stuff to keep the garage clean and operating for our customers here. And we, really based this estimate on our experience with other facilities that we have at other parking or other airports where we manage parking operations. What we have built into the model here is 500 space and 1,000 space, 171,000 in year one and 237 in year two respectively for the 1,000 space larger facility.
And Scott is the same consultant the city's used for years, so that was important to get him connected with it. I think they still use Scott at Walker for the city projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do want to say too, that I forgot, earlier, but when we're talking about what we recommend for that new rate once you have a garage in place in the short term, that really is a result as well of a rate study we did in the area. So we looked at other airports in the Midwest, and what they're getting for a garage rate. And $15 is kind of right in the middle there for a number of airports that are sort of similar size and scope and complexity of Fargo. And then, obviously you take a look at, what you're getting for garages downtown, and it's much less than $15. So we need to make sure, we're setting that rate at a price point where we're gonna, maximize occupancy of the garage facility year round, and like I said, not just those winter months.
I believe in 2016, the rate was $26, $26, and it requires 60% occupancy every day to break even at $26. Well, the rate study you talked about, what people were willing to pay was substantially less. It was around $9 or $11 a day. So you take a day like today, when you have the long-term lots south of there at 26 or even at $15. Well, a nice day like today, they'll probably take the walk and not park in the garage to save the money. Or go to the economy lot.
I can tell you just from experience having our seasonal shuttle here that folks are plenty happy walking even in the winter as well. A lot of folks are, and they just bypass the shuttle as opposed to waiting for it to come around and walk up to the terminal. It's not that far away, and I should say too that typically when an airport's looking at building a garage for their parking facilities, they're looking at building up because they can't expand out anywhere else, right? They're landlocked and they really have to go up to increase their parking inventory, and not necessarily the case here now. But we do also need to keep in mind that the further out you develop surface parking lot, the more potential that you might have to employ a shuttle service to get people into the terminal, which is a costly endeavor.
But when you decided to build in Baton Rouge, what was the tipping point? Because you're saying that it didn't financially make sense.
Sure.
Why did you do it?
Yeah, we had a lot of push and support, believe it or not, from our car rental agencies. We first built a car rental garage, if you would. And so it's kind of like a mixed use garage initially. And so we had a CFC already in place, which is a little different from Fargo, obviously. So we went from like a 485 CFC to a 615 CFC overnight, but we had the backing and support in order to fund it that way. And obviously can only fund the portion of the garage that they're utilizing, but it did offset some of the costs. So the entire garage, if you would, could be built, if you will. So the remainder of the garage was offset.
Just explain a CFC, so that's an active acronym.
Sure, sorry, it's a customer facility charge, and essentially it's a fee that's passed on to the folks that use the airport, that rent cars from the airport. And so it's a user fee similar to a PFC, a passenger facility charge. And it's a daily fee. Every day that you rent the vehicle, you pay that CFC.
How many studies like this have you done?
You know, this is my first with the company. I know we've done it for some other clients in the past, but you know, I've been with SP Plus for 4 years. This was actually, you know, originally done before my time here as well. So I can't tell you, you know, with confidence, but it's, you know, I can probably find out.
Well,
But that's why we did want to pull
yeah,
from
just
some of
just
those
my experience
utilized-
is
I'm sorry, go ahead.
my experience, parking ramps never make money, they never pay for themselves. There's always alternative reasons for looking at it. And so you have to kind of figure out sometimes in soft measurements, what are the other reasons, like you said. So how many studies have shown that the parking garage will pay for itself entirely?
You know, it depends. I'll let Greg jump in because I think he's got more experience coming from the airport side. I think, you know, depending on the market you're in, you know, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, you know, potential for public-private investment sometimes helps, you know, push projects like that through.
No, I just meant from when you've done these studies, how many have said this is gonna cash flow, this will pay its debt service, repair and maintenance?
I would say the larger markets, you probably can get away with it. Just
But of the studies you've done, if you've done 20 studies, have 19 of them paid for themselves, or?
Yeah, no, I can't
19
even tell you that. I know we haven't done 20 studies, but, you know, I can tell you just in Sioux Falls' case, I mean, they had quite a bit of reserves in the coffers. They weren't planning on fighting anything. So that's a huge component of, you know, if you plan on borrowing money, I think, you know, a huge factor. And some airports aren't in that type of situation. So that would push a project like this through quicker, I think, in some markets.
Yeah, it's the funding source and it's the rate of growth.
Right.
So if the rate of growth is high enough, then it'll be yield and justify.
Have you done a sensitivity analysis on your key assumptions from the standpoint of, you know, if interest rates drop 1% or if interest rates went up 1%?
We didn't look at percentages, but we did look at growth.
Okay, do you have that information?
Yeah, there's a slide where it shows you what the growth would need to be in order for it to break even. So in the
And then to me, it would seem, comparison to other regional airports, you know, it's a little out of line, you know, if you're gonna try and compare it to Minneapolis. Have you looked at Uber or Lyft rates versus parking rates? Because that's a decision I make. Is, you know, if I take an Uber, what's it gonna cost me?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you done that analysis?
You know, not specifically in the way you're thinking. I mean, certainly we do those transportation studies that you guys have seen in the past, and we have factored that in here as well. I mean, we projected that, you know, typically, you know, those transportation studies tell us based on the season, you know, 40% of your departing passengers are getting dropped off out front as opposed to parking on site. We did project into the revenue model that if we had a garage here, I think we would get at least 2% of those passengers that are getting dropped off that would use the facilities or use the garage as opposed to being dropped off. We wanted to be conservative on that though.
The other thing, the alternative of just paving surface parking, there's a tremendous infrastructure cost back to the municipality to service that stormwater. Do you figure that in any?
Is that factored in? That's not really in the Army Reserve, no, that's not really factored in.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Are we, Are we planning to ask questions later, or
For
just we'll
sure.
have more?
No, we have a Q&A.
Okay,
But-
all right, cause I have some more
Happy to keep
questions.
it in
No,
So I didn't know if I
Wow.
would
If it's top
jump
line,
in.
we're welcome to entertain them now. So-
I have questions for him too, but I'm gonna wait till he's done talking and then I'm gonna bombard him, so.
I'm just
I don't
gonna
want you to
interrupt
forget
and cause the
No,
whole
I-
thing to go off track.
For sure.
Go ahead to the next slide there, and I'll let Greg kind of explain this visual for you.
Yeah, so this is the incremental cost, which is similar to the slide you saw earlier. And the good news on this slide is if you look at that far right graphic, if you would, the negative net cash flow continues to decrease, but conversely, obviously the cost of RM and the maintenance that goes along with the garage increases because the garage is aging and as you would expect. And so this is again just pointing out the reasons as to why it's not, the revenue essentially is not keeping up with the cost that is associated with it until you fully retire the debt. Next slide. And this is just that same scenario, again, taking both ends of the spectrum, the 500 space over the 15 years and the 1,000 space over the 25 years. And it's the same scenario. So obviously, if both ends of the spectrum are kind of trending in this manner, then those two models between this are in the same way as well. Next slide. And this is that break-even point that we were going to talk about earlier. In order for you to have a positive cash flow before you retire the debt, you would have to look at a rate of growth of 9% on the 500 space scenario at 15 years. And that's every year. That's not just a single year where you may spike and then go back to the 2% that you're projecting. This is a consistent 9% growth each year. And that's the lowest number that you can have as a growth number. The next slide looks at the 1,000 space scenario at 25 years. This is a little more favorable at 7%. But again, that's your break-even point again in order for this to cash flow before year 25.
And just so you understand, what that means is, 7% employment growth year over year for 15 years. Sean got some good direction from FAA just last week, and solid projection is 2% growth every year. So quite a bit less than what it would take to make this thing profitable before the end of the debt service term.
I'm sorry, I'm just getting.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Is this 100% finance? There's no front end buy down on the cost at all?
That's correct. It's 75-25 split, tax exempt and taxable financing.
Yeah, but 100% full cost. So
Correct.
front end money could bring this down and bring your break-even point way back.
That's totally correct.
Front end money, can, I think, have a huge impact on this analysis.
Yes.
Yeah, we did discuss that with Sean yesterday as well. So yeah, I mean, one thing I guess we did back in 2016, but we didn't do here is, and he really did it in the same way when you look at the growth percentage year over year, but we had put a dollar figure on what the rate would have to be in order to make it profitable for the debt service, and it came out to like $26. Obviously, you can never charge any customers here $26 for a space in the garage per day.
Right. One last thing to add is that currently your CPE is just under $5, Sean.
Right.
So by doing this, again, your debt service is about $3.6 million each year on the 1,000 space scenario at 25 years. So again, that money has to be accounted for. That's currently going to the operational budget because your rate model would definitely be adversely impacted if you try to cover that from your own coffers.
Just 3.6 million was the debt service?
Approximately, yeah. And that's in your packet as well, in that amortization paper.
Per year.
And I should add,
It decreases obviously, but year one, it starts at 3.6 million.
And I imagine they just looked at sort of current tax exempt rates, not taxable, but Bank of North Dakota and some of the other funding mechanisms that may be available, that hasn't been factored in.
No, we just looked at the current rate from Baker.
Yeah, rates got from Baker Tilly, the city's consultant.
Yeah.
No, we have some unique situations.
the nice thing about the model though, and the tables that you see there, it's in a spreadsheet, and it's
plug
all
it in.
input values, right? So if you just change that percentage, or change the whole model, you can see how that affects, the long-term.
Yeah, I've sometimes seen in these studies where it's probably more beneficial to look at the key assumptions, the key drivers of the spreadsheet, and see where the sensitivity becomes.
That's exactly right.
And so, yeah, maybe you're getting that on the head.
Yeah, you can change that finance, and affect that. You can also change the rate that we would set for the garage too, from 15 to 16 to 17, and see how that affects the revenue coming in, and then what that difference is between cost and revenue.
Yeah, so by us building the model in advance, you can just always give us the new values, the input values, and we can update that by and provide you with whatever results in.
So one of the ideas here just a few years ago was like John had mentioned, is to do a buy down at the front, so there would be some local cash that would be invested so that you wouldn't have to borrow as much. And you can look at the bank in North Dakota and those other scenarios, but having said that, part of that conversation as well is we have 2 of our 4 mills in place that are allowed under the state statute. Was looking at an additional 2 mills. If this was truly a community investment in the airport, that the 2 mills that we aren't using, 1 or 2 of them could be dedicated to debt service. So it's a true investment by the community, would sunset when the debt would be retired. That's another option that we've talked about in years past. The other is if it's a 1,000 space garage, 800 net, is that the car rental agencies could occupy one level of the garage, maybe the first floor, and then through the CFC that they talked about, the car rental agencies could pay for the portion that they use, which would then take off more of that debt burden as well. That's been done at quite a few different airports. I think Sioux Falls is looking at that, Bozeman has done that in other airports with the CFC. So I know Bernie is here. There was an interest in the past from the car rental agencies to occupy any part of a parking garage, but I'm not sure if that has changed in the future. So if there was 200 spaces dedicated for the car rental agencies, all of those scenarios could decrease and improve this scenario to where it could be profitable sooner than later.
For sure.
And Bernie, I don't know if the car rental agencies are interested or not.
I think we would, based on our growth, we're running out of parking, so we would certainly look at it very positively.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to interrupt. What Sean just said was exactly where my mind was going. Some of us are meeting tomorrow morning at the city level with your leadership. If this report could be shared with us, with Michael Redlinger and us proactively, I guess my head says, if we could partner and put our energies together and aim for providing this parking for the public, what role could the city play? And Sean mentioned the mill levy, and that's exactly where my head was going, was maybe we could explore ways that we could partner to help make this more feasible up front from the public's perspective. But that would be based on the desire that this, hey, what does it take to do this? And of course, looking at the information now, it's compelling that it's going to take a lot of work to do it. But maybe the city can partner. I'd like to have us have that discussion.
Agreed.
Questions?
I do have a question. So what I like your presentation, but the thing that was missing is the graph of the employments and the number of people that are going to continue to grow and over the years. And you scared the crap out of me about a month ago when you gave our terminal expansion study, and it said how many people, how many employments we're going to have 20 years from now, and it was very high, and I was like, we are out of parking the way it is right now, and we can add surface parking, and we're going to be at 19th Avenue before we get those number of employments done in 20 years, and so I wanted to see your slide on there saying how many parking spots we're going to need in 20 years. You say 2% a year, but just the number. I think you said in our last transportation study that 40% of the people were parking here, and about 60% were getting dropped off in some fashion.
No, actually the opposite.
Other way around?
30 to 40% dropped off, 60%
parking. And if you say if our employments are going to double in 20 years, how much parking are we going to need in 20 years? Because I've always been a proponent of, hey, I'm going to have a self-driving car in less than 5 years. I'm actually probably going to buy a Tesla this year. But the key thing is with Fargo, we have such a regional pull from Fergus Falls and Jamestown and and all our surrounding areas, is that we're always going to have people parking here. Maybe we'll lose some local parkers who go to the self-driving car and get dropped off or whatnot. But you can't have your you don't necessarily get dropped off very well from Jamestown.
Small towns nearby.
Correct.
Those are solid parkers for you guys. Certainly, that's nothing that's never going to disappear. I think the study you're probably talking about came from Mead and Hunt.
Yeah, it was.
It's a trigger map that we probably list off.
Eric, we have that graph where basically it shows the correlation between, exactly what you're talking about, the emplacements versus the existing parking, and then there were trigger points where you get a certain projection of employment growth, you added 500 stalls, in the next trigger point added 500 stalls and projected that over time, so.
It was, we need to marry those up with it came from the terminal expansion. They had a chart in there and I was like, wow, we're gonna run out of parking very fast here. So, I mean, I think that we absolutely need to add more parking. And I'm a huge proponent of doing a parking garage, but I don't see us being able to afford it on our own without a mill levy, putting it on the taxpayers. I mean, or other ways to, finance it creatively, so that's the problem for me. I mean, I'm a yes for building a ramp immediately, but how are we gonna pay for it? Because it is a negative cash flow, we're gonna lose $3 million a year for the first 25 years? Well, that's a big nut to swallow,
And
so.
we can't go to the airlines and increase rates and charges
Right.
based on losses in the parking lot, we'd all be in jail, so.
Right, and as you continue to recruit airline and air service, one of the first things you want to know is what your CPE is. So
Right.
that's always a conversation piece, but I'll also add just to Sean's point about finding also alternative funding sources, and your point as well.
But the interesting thing about parking is the way you run out of parking is very, very slowly at first and then really fast. And the minute you're out of parking, then you're
We're there
gonna
now.
have, yeah, well, then you're gonna have negative impacts to customer service, changing habits and long-term decline. You have to climb back out of it. You always have to be careful with these type of studies because it's all in the assumptions and with some minor tweaks to the assumptions, I can show this thing cash flowing in 10 years with reasonable assumptions. And so, this decision has to be made towards the future in a business manner that's assessing the risk of, look, this is what's gotta happen, these are the milestones that have to be achieved. These are the things the airport has to accomplish to do this in a successful manner. Not, just, hey, what do we do just to make this work?
And that's the point I'm making as well, too. When we had to leverage state capital outlay dollars, our state legislature also has infrastructure dollars that the airport was able to tap into.
Yep.
So 10% of the upfront costs, those program management fees, construction admin services, we were able to go to the state and lobby to get those dollars in order to cover that upfront cost that we didn't have in our coffers to cover.
Yep.
So that 10% went away immediately. To your point, as you change these input values, the entire, the dollar change overnight.
And I would imagine your construction costs are just, I mean, you don't know what's going on with those. So the market may have to stabilize a little bit there. And we get the weirdest interest rate structure we've seen in a long time. And so.
I would say that, just from experience in parking, that the one mechanism airports do have at their disposal when, capacity is, nearing its max, and I can see this, we have some airports doing this right now in Idaho Falls. Right now, Jackson Hole, Wyoming is closed right now for some runway work, and we're getting a lot of traffic in Idaho Falls. We're out of parking. We're actually starting to use a surface lot that isn't even controlled nearby, let people, park for free. But, one of those mechanisms you have is to raise that rate, and increase that revenue that goes towards paying for projects like this as well. But I think you also gotta consider too, the reasonable assumptions, but also the other priorities that may be in place at the airport as well. We've talked about the expansion program and some of the airfield work that needs to be done. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't, just point out too that, airports have gone into projects like this and then COVID hits or something crazy happens. You take a look at the chance for something to happen in 25 years, when you have a lot of debt, it's out there, in the airport space, you gotta consider that too.
One thing, if possible, the rationale and the spreadsheets you used, could we get those, to do our own internal modeling?
Yeah, in fact, we can even give you the spreadsheet if you wanna change the inputs yourself and take a look at how that affects the numbers. The assumptions, the base level assumptions are all laid out in the document in front of you there, and we'll send that over to you in in a PDF or Word document. But we can also send you the Excel spreadsheet, you can take a look at the phone
That'd be
result, change those input values and see what we'd have to charge for the garage to get this thing to make, to be paid off in 10 years, for example, as opposed to 15 years or something like that.
And I think as far as looking at a 500 space garage isn't in our best interest.
No.
It would have to be larger. It's 1,000, 1,200 space gross.
I think 1,000 is the bare minimum. I mean, if we're parking over 2,000 people now and we're gonna double in 10 years, why would we look at doing a 500 space
And it'd
garage?
be an expandable garage. I know Boise had a great model where they had 4 pies, basically. I don't know if they're all built out yet in Boise, but 1,000 now, they did
There's like a
1,000.
modular.
Yeah, and all tied together, so it was all pre-planned to be a 4,000 space garage, and they did it in 1,000 space increments, so that worked out really well.
How many spaces would the rental cars utilize?
Bernie, how many spaces do you guys use right now? Do you know how many cars you have here?
I'm trying to think.
None.
On a ready, on a ready lot, we have probably, looking at Jeff here, because we just redid that, 220.
Probably roughly that.
And then we have a storage lot that is probably about same size, it's north of our service facility.
So the intent of a car rental agency using a garage would be, it's where you go out and get your car and leave, and then they just keep bringing cars into that space. It's a ready lot, so it's not a long-term storage area. Although you could use it for that, but it wouldn't be advisable.
Well, and we're running out of, our ready line now is taxed, over the summer months. So we do need extra space, so one of the potentials would be, that if we had a garage, our ready line would be there and our turn-in lot would be the existing ready line. So, we could, maximize those spaces would be, specifically for, the rental customer leaving the airport.
I have a question for you. So this winter we had a lot of snow. How does the snow impact your facility and your ability to operate? And are we removing the snow in an effective manner?
We have 2 employees that start at 2:30 in the morning.
Okay.
To start moving snow. We each take care of our own lots. Enterprise National takes care of theirs, First takes care of theirs, and Mavis Budget, Payless takes care of theirs. And then if there's a massive storm, the airport will run, through just to open the center, because they have bigger equipment, we use smaller plows.
Okay,
But it's something that, we deal with.
great.
It's, we have some crabby employees that.
Well, I know moving snow is just a challenge, period. The way that, whether it's at your home and you get your driveway blocked in, or if you're in the parking lot and you're gone for a week and you come home to a snowbank and behind your car, that would be one thing that I think for our region that would be beneficial. Maybe people would pay a little bit more for parking if they didn't have to, come back to a car that would be difficult to get out. I was wondering what the difference was with your situation than with the passenger.
Other questions?
I was wondering if you could tell us, in comparison to Sioux Falls, because you said they're building a 1,100 square foot or parking spot, and that how many levels? Because you said there was not, these proposals didn't include roof parking, which would give us covered parking, which I think is important for our region. Sioux Falls, how does their market differ from ours, as far as boarding, the population? And then how did they get, I know that they had more capital up front, but considering we may be similar with weather, challenges, how did they decide to go forward with this project?
Yeah, it's interesting, they're at capacity, I think, Sean can tell you the similarities in airport operations, I think, it's a very similar size market. Enplanements have come back quicker there, I think, we're about full over there right now. My manager there is shutting down lots on a daily basis because they're too full. And so, that's a problem for them, certainly. They are, in a situation where they're more landlocked, they don't have, available nearby land. Like, for example, we're gonna develop this overflow lot here this summer, which is gonna give us some more capacity, real close to the terminal. They just don't have that option there, unfortunately, either. They also had old, parking access and revenue control equipment back there, moving forward with the same system that, you guys have put in here. So, that's similar too, but, their financing position is different. They have a lot of reserves in their coffers already. They've been planning to build something for quite some time. Although they're really looking at the feasibility of it now, because when they were looking at 37 million, they were all in. Now that they're looking, they're gonna have to start borrowing some money now, and that's not something that they're keen to do. So, they're gonna be looking at, they have just received bids. I don't think they've opened them yet, Sean, to your question yesterday, so.
The initial projection in 2019, I got the letter, was under 30 million. It's almost double now. Their boardings compared to us were at 470 and change, Darren. They're just under 600,000.
Yeah, just under 600.
And the last time we had NDSU run a population study, and I guess we could have a consultant do it, the number of people that live within 100 miles of Sioux Falls was 42 to 45% more than live within 100 miles of Fargo. It's much more densely populated. So their growth is going to obviously be more substantial than ours. But the number one driving factor for them is their landlocked.
Okay.
They have no space to do surface parking.
Brad, I got another question for you. If we, let's just pretend that we were gonna break ground tomorrow, and then we're gonna put this facility over our existing parking structure. What do we do with our parking at that point? Do we build another lot and then shuttle people in, or I mean?
So that's a good question. I mean, the overflow is gonna really help with capacity. It's gonna take a lot of care, with the operations team to, be monitoring inventory and controlling that on a daily basis and pushing people. In the case of Idaho Falls, where we're full right now, just to make sure they have capacity for people, they've changed the short-term rate to the same as the long-term rate. So it's pretty much the same cost to park anywhere at the airport now, just so we can fill in those empty spaces. In Sioux Falls, for example, they're gonna displace a lot of that short-term parking that they currently have in that surface lot across the street from the terminal with that garage construction facility. They have plenty of capacity way out in economy, but they are seriously looking at a year-round shuttle service when that construction of that garage facility happens, because they're going to be shuttling people in there, or people are going to have to park much further out. And that's a costly endeavor. I mean, that shuttle operations that I can take. But from experience, we have it at a number of locations. It's typically the most expensive service you can provide at an airport that typically serves the lowest cost parking product, the economy product. So it's really kind of a loss leader. It's a customer convenience thing, shuttle.
So this might have been prior to your time on the board, but you can see the different colored alfalfa out here. So this entire area here was prepped for parking. So all of the sub base is already in place for that. Just take the topsoil off, all of the clay is in place. So the intention of this here by the board a few years ago was for parking in anticipation of a garage or other things. So there is another place to go for parking, unless the East Economy lot that we're going to start on here in the next month or so, there could be room for some expansion there. So we're going to pick up more spaces here next year once the exit plaza goes. So I think we're going to be well positioned to cover the demand in parking for the next 6 to 8 years. But
I have another question. So how many levels is the proposal?
We really didn't get into much of the design of the facility itself, but I would estimate probably like 3. 3 or 4 probably.
got there yet.
So what would the average lifespan be of a parking garage? Like it's a 25-year loan.
So yeah, Baton Rouge, we built that one in 2000, phase 1 of it, and it's obviously still there. But obviously we had to have some structural repairs done, somewhere around year 15 to year 20.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still in place with no issues.
I mean, they last a long time, it's just they cost more the older they get.
Sure.
I was just wondering if it makes a difference if we do a 4-level or 3-level, or like the lifespan and the maintenance issues.
So it's a 1,200 space garage and it's 3 levels uncovered on the top.
How long does it take to build a ramp?
ramp.
Yeah, to build a garage, to build a parking facility.
That one was about 15 months or so.
So you don't have winter to deal with though.
Exactly.
The city just.
You'd
moved a
have
couple
to
of them.
close down 1331 if you built much over 3.
But keep in mind, it was just like yours, it was an existing parking space, so they just literally started building up from that first floor, first surface. So,
Just to take us further down the rabbit hole, other revenue, other revenue generation ideas, we've got rental cars, have you looked at those, hotels, whatever?
We have, and I know Sean has some experience with that, I'll let him talk about that. You know, we talked about public-private partnerships for a little bit. Typically, you get into a situation with a company who might be willing to invest in a facility, they're gonna want some return right away on day one. You know, we talked about, you know, potential to maybe do solar panels on the roof, and then, you know, a company can maybe sell that energy back to as a revenue generating source. But it's not as mature here in North Dakota as it is in some other markets. And then you've been approached by actually some developers that have also determined, you know, it just wasn't feasible at the
That
time.
was a hotel parking ramp combination, there's been 3 different ones that looked at it, one being Ace Brand, did it 3 times. Never shared the data with us other than that it doesn't work. One from Lenexa, Kansas, and then a combination of a couple of other hotel folks here in town, so. It's been looked at, but that was a hotel and a 300 space parking garage.
Questions from the audience?
What, have you ever thought about underground parking?
We haven't, and I'm not all that familiar with that. Are you not familiar at all with it?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of
Construction.
apartments in town that have underground parking.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, we're not familiar with that, you know, we're parking operators at first and foremost, so, you know, but, I do know, you know, your garage is downtown, I mean, you know, some of those are $75 a month, so you're talking a couple dollars a day, people are willing to pay to park in a garage downtown. I think there is a couple daily rates of about, you know, $8 or $10. So, you know, really has to be, I still think it's gonna be tough getting, you know, a good occupancy rate in a garage at $15 year round here. Just because I know people are willing to walk and out.
I'll draw a parallel, and I know not all construction is created equal, but we had an EMAS bed, engineered materials resting system bed, which stops the plane if it overruns the runway. And so we had to move a state highway, and so we looked at going under as opposed to doing a flyover. And the cost to go under for that type of construction of a road was twice as much to go over than it was to go over. So we ultimately ended up just going over in order to get it out of the RSA, RPC. So.
And I just wonder if it has to do with digging and moving much more material.
I think it was the flooding in that case, it was just the maintenance to go.
It's worth exploring, no doubt about it.
There's a lot of other reasons that we can't do it here.
Oh, yeah.
Just the extreme weather and extension, so when you think about the apartments, they have basically a waterproof building on top of them. And now you put it in our environment where you can have a 60-degree change in a 24-hour period, and expansion and contraction, and rolling over with big payloaders to clean the snow on top of that, it just doesn't work in our environment. The soils don't like it as well in terms of all the different issues we have to deal with it, so, yeah. Actually, you do bring up a good point from the standpoint of it's probably more effective to build up than it is to, you know, so more stories than less, because we're gonna end up, you know, you end up doing deep foundations anyway, and once you get to a certain point, I mean, then it's like you can do 3 or you can do 7 stories, and you haven't changed the foundation cost any, so now you're, you know, you have a smaller footprint, and yes, it is more efficient that way.
Can everyone online hear that? Commissioner Strand? Sometimes they don't. Okay.
All right, any other questions for the gentleman? We do have their contact info, I think they're readily accessible,
We'll
and
make sure we'll send these documents out to Sean and have him just distribute to you guys, so you can have the basic Excel, you know, model in Excel spreadsheet and really play with the numbers yourself.
That'd be great.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you have any facilities or any airports that utilize covered parking?
We do, you know, I mean, that's always an option as well. You know, in fact, when we were talking, if you could just put one layer on top of the whole short-term lot right here, you know, that would give you some covered parking and expand, you know, your capacity as well. You know, the covered parking we typically see are canopies, you know, and especially short-term usually a portion of that lot. And then you can actually even charge, most airports charge more for those spaces, just because of that cover. We see it more and more, certainly in, you know, markets in the west of California where it's, you know, in Denver where it's sunny, 300 days out of the year.
Yeah, Panasonic actually partnered with Denver and did a cover canopy, and they had solar panels on top, so they were able to, you know, make money off of the solar panels if you would. So that kind of goes into our public-private partnership conversation in that, you know, they saw some benefits, so obviously they built the canopies in order to cover their lots.
A lot of it is for sun protection and hail. Here our snow goes sideways.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how that would look.
It rains sideways and all that.
So for sun and hail, it's probably a good thing, but for snow, it would be not
Yeah.
real good.
And what is our timeline for making a decision on this?
This has been on our master plan for some time, our CIP plan, but this is just an update that was requested a few months ago, and I just got around to it today, so there's really no time on
Talking about it for 10 years?
it.
All right.
Almost. So this is the snapshot in time.
We can use weather modification to seed the clouds and stop the hail.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate your time.
We don't need covers.
So we'll get from them the spreadsheet information that you guys can do some of your own modeling and use your own assumptions. Moving on, number 10, continued discussion regarding draft lease language and hangar ground leases and lease terminal.
Yes, this is me. So if you recall, I think 2 previous meetings, I was asked to draft some language for our hangar tenant ground leases, which included the requirement of airworthy aircraft. And I did do that, and you did review it at the last meeting. But then I did ask for some more time to sort of go down the road a little further. And I went and I found FAA policy on non-aeronautical use of airport hangars dated November 15, 2016, which I reviewed. And it talks about those usage being storage of active aircraft, final assembly of aircraft under construction, non-commercial construction of amateur-built or kit-built aircraft, maintenance, repair, refurbishment of aircraft, but not the indefinite storage of non-operational aircraft, and then storage of aircraft equipment like towing machines and things like that. So then I also did research. I go to an annual airport law conference with a bunch of airport lawyers around the country. A firm by the name of Kaplan and Kirsch is the law firm that runs that. I did reach out to one of my contacts there to run through that language that I had drafted, and he did send me a response, basically indicating my thought process is that non-worthy aircraft is already considered not an aeronautical purpose. And so that the FAA policy already does cover that. My worry is if we simply had airworthy aircraft, we would have to create a list of exclusions, or exceptions, not exclusions, exceptions, to name all of those other things that the policy itself actually names as being an aeronautical use. And so I wanted to bring that to you. I've redrafted some further language in looking at our ground leases, but just wanted to give you the update as to the further policy research I did, and then the fact that I reached out with Kaplan and Kirsch, and they're confirming sort of the issue that could be created, understanding that the policy does address it. So I guess and I'm not the board, the determination would need to be indefinite. You know, we're not allowed to, but not the indefinite storage of non-operational aircraft. What does that mean? So that's the update I have for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Eric? Any thoughts?
Well, you have to put a number on how long an aircraft can be non-operational. So it says non-operational aircraft, but how long does that mean? Does that mean, well, I didn't get to it this year, but I'll get to it next year? Oh, I didn't get to it again this year, you know? So it just gets this rolling thing, so you have to define what a non-operational time frame is.
And I plan to reach back out to my contact there. I did go through my airport law sort of cheat sheet book to see if I could find this kind of case law is very fact specific, it can be very obscure. So I plan to reach back out to him and say, airport lawyer who does this day in and day out, can you think of any cases that might help us define what indefinite is? Beyond the dictionary definition I gave you, in terms of a time frame. And then, does non-operational or non-airworthy mean it's not being worked on to be repaired? Those are sort of kind of the next round of questions I have.
I guess one concern would be if there was a plane in a hangar being worked on and they said we ordered parts 6 months ago, but because of the disruption, we can't get them, and now it's a year and a half later, well, where is that line?
Right.
And did they in fact order them? If
And
they're
that is
working on it,
happening.
where's that line?
That is happening right now. I know Jet Center had a Cirrus that was down for 7 or 8 months waiting for a part for the fuel system. You know, so that is supply chain stuff that is happening, but the intent on that is good faith that they actually have parts on order, right? And not just, I have friends who build airplanes and I haven't seen one of them finish an airplane inside of a decade, you know, so, I mean, it just gets to be the other wife, you know, and it just gets to be like, it's just kind of over there. And they spend all their extra time, which is not a lot, with their amateur plane, so it's just, you just gotta have a definition on how long that plane does. But, you know, like, Lynn Thompson builds Super Cubs, and he pumps out about one a year, right? So Bernie, right?
Yes.
And he was renting, well, yeah, he retired now, but he was building them in one of Bernie's facilities, and fantastic work, but it takes him about a year to build an airplane, so. And he worked on it every day, full time.
So if you're an amateur build and you're doing it nights and weekends, it stretches out sometimes 10 years.
Right, so, anyway, that's just my concern, so.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Move on to number 11, airport construction and security update.
Please, Jeff, do you have anything?
Here.
Are you gonna give us security?
Security update.
David Negron, he's the assistant federal security.
Yeah, well, good morning. So, big project coming up beginning of July, July 4th, it'll actually start July 5th. We're receiving new X-ray systems for the checkpoint, analogic CT systems. And so there's a concurrent lane expansions and infrastructure being done. So when that's all said and done, you'll actually have a three-lane checkpoint here, all with analogic CT X-rays. With that, we just had a call yesterday, the first call of weekly coordination calls between all the stakeholders. And it sounds like there's a very real potential that during some of that time frame, we'll be down to one lane. With this project is kind of unique in that every piece that you see today will be moving one way or another because of the third lane expansion. So we actually brought that up yesterday, and the deployment coordinators and the innovation folks are taking a look at that to see if there's sequencing that they can do in a way to try and keep us operating with 2 lanes. So that's yet unknown, but just awareness that you may have single lane. And so it could be, we can have a couple of weeks where we'll be single lane operations just for the fact of deploying the new equipment, shifting all pieces, security equipment that's in there. And then, so each system in itself takes about 5 days to get done. There's the installation process, the certification, the SAT testing, and then another contractor finally ultimately says, yes, you may use this for security operations. So that's a week-long process per unit. And so it sounds like right now the initial plan is to start with the western side deploy the first, and so removing the AT X-ray, the rapid scan, and then deploying the first analogic CT on the western side. And that's all they'll do that week, so we anticipate the other pieces of security equipment will remain in place, the AIT, the walkthrough. And then this is what they're exploring further now for us, we don't quite know yet. What will they do next? Or is there a way that they could somehow do concurrent work? And it's quite a challenge, there's a limited amount of space, and so they're not quite sure if they can do basically 2 at a time. It's probably not possible to do, given that both X-rays are really in the way of everything that needs to be done. So short of moving the systems that exist to their new locations prior to analogic deployment, then you could probably have concurrent work being done, but that's really not feasible at this point for them to do. So it's gonna be a great upgrade. So nice expansion capacity, on throughput for the airport. We are hearing that for experienced operators, probably around 135 an hour. So a net increase from our 2 systems now, which they model us around 150 now. So just some of it is the machinations that go on in the equipment itself. There's nothing you can do about it. The algorithm's doing what they do. It's what we have. So these have been deployed for a little while in other places in the country, and so as they've been deployed, they have brought refinements to the system. So we're in a nice position because we are not so much piloting the systems. They have gone through some additional refinements since initial deployment, so that's nice. So what we're receiving contains that refinement work and that a little bit of fine tuning of algorithms to better maximize the capability of units. I think that's the report. Any questions?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. You said it's gonna be down 4th of July weekend? Or 4th of July weekend?
They'll start the first system July 5th.
Okay, good.
It's a pretty typical busy time of the year. Yeah, it's a pretty busy travel weekend. Is there a time where you can deconflict it to a less busy time?
Like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We, so actually system-wide, it's just gone through a pretty profound schedule adjustment because of supply chain delays. And so they actually kept Fargo with the schedule that we were hearing was going to happen. It kept us there. Our 2 other airports actually changed. And so it's just virtue of availability of equipment. So as they receive and airports' readiness to receive, they've gone through a big shift.
So
And
take it
so
when you
this is
can
how
get it.
Fargo is laid out at this time. I don't know that we have any ability to influence an adjustment within the already determined system lines. Likely not, yeah.
So your estimation is July 5th, and it would take a week and a half to 2 weeks?
So it's a week per system, so 3 weeks from July 5th, all the systems will be installed. But each system, each analogic CT system itself takes a week. It's a week-long project for one system, so 1 lane per week.
Okay. Do the airlines communicate then with the passengers to anticipate a longer wait time?
And the TSA will have a large public relations campaign. They'll be working with Flint Communications and to get the word out, but the airlines will be in the loop. Probably sooner than later.
Yeah,
Our pilot
absolutely.
project actually starts today, they're gonna start building a construction wall.
So there, okay.
Jeff, did you have anything or not?
Yeah, I guess on the economy lots, we have a pre-construction meeting on June 9th. So at that time, worst case, like we're gonna come in and tell us the exact start date, but what they've told me so far is they're targeting the end of June, first part of July, somewhere in there. So there's that, and then I handed out this executive summary, so for the payment condition index. So every 3 years, the North Dakota Aeronautics Commission does a project to assess all airfield payments at every airport in the state. And that complete study is online at the North Dakota Aeronautics site. This is the executive summary specifically for Fargo. And if you turn to page 10 of the report, basically this is just a graph of all the condition of the pavement on the airfield. So there's a team of inspectors that goes out, does visual assessment of all the pavement. And from the data that they gather, they assess, a number value from 0 to 100 of the condition, and you can see on the graph right here, 100 is the top end of the scale and 0 is the bottom end. So overall, I mean, the payments at Hector are in very good condition, with the exception of the terminal apron out here. That's in the reconstruction mode. We actually have that on the CIP, I believe once the terminal expansion is complete, so we're looking at 2026. And then right now, we're working on a scope of work to do some reconstruction and major rehab in the South GA, which is also the very distressed area of the airfield. So all this information is very valuable in developing a CIP, developing justification for doing something, reconstructing pavements, rehabilitating pavements, all that kind of thing when you're fighting for dollars with federal government and the state of North Dakota. So key point in that is you want green is good, you want to spend the money up front to maintain the pavements rather than let it deteriorate to a condition where you have to reconstruct it, especially with the way construction dollars are right now. So.
The summary on the last page, 44.8 million will be needed over 5 years just to maintain the payments above the critical PCI. That's on the last page. 44.8, so. Decide how we're gonna use our reserves for the terminal project, parking garage, or pavement. The FA's gotta say pavement is number one. It's not terminal buildings, it's not parking.
That's correct, yeah.
So you have a large amount of yellow in the North General Aviation area and South General Aviation area. Is that how long before that turns into red?
I would have thought it would have been red, but it's close.
It should be red
Well,
right now.
is it, because we have red on the terminal and we're not gonna get to that until 2026, you said, so
If you go to obviously it's not in the summer here, but if you go to the aeronautics website and go to the online version, there's actually a slide rule on there where it, makes an assumption on, okay, it's gonna degrade, X number of points per year if you don't do anything to it. So you can kind of project that out. So I don't know what it is offhand for the North GA, but it's time to start planning.
The Aeronautics Commission website, their tool is really, really useful for that purpose, so you know that slide.
And that would be right here, this website?
Yes.
Okay.
NDAC, aero.NDAC.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, I guess.
The final thing is the audit proposals are due this week. I've had 2 audit firms contact me for information about doing our audit services starting in 2023 to the 2022 books. Been working with Balance Tax and Accounting on GASB 87. That's a new requirement for airports and how they do leases. So a bunch of airports, we're going to be meeting in Seattle. They're trying to figure out what format can we all adopt, which will meet the GASB 87 requirements now on reporting leases and future values and so forth. So that'll be an interesting exercise. Investment Portfolio Manager Services, our RFP was out this week and had a few calls, some emails, and not really sure what we'll see there, but time will tell. So other than that, I don't have anything else.
Questions?
I have one more question. So obviously I'm newer here, so I was just wondering if during the parking different ideas that are being thrown out. I'm thinking about like Sanford has the underground, tunnel that gets from the building to the parking ramp, and the parking ramp I'm referring to is the one on the north side of the building that just has one level of underground, and then and then they're parking on basically the roof of the structure. So it doubles I mean, it's not 3 or 4 stories, but I know that the bridge at one time that we were looking at was very expensive as well. So what the feasibility would be in doing kind of an altered, you double the parking with the space that we have, we give a little bit of protection, and then we also get the safe walkway, if that's been considered or bid out. And then, you know, I point to the Minneapolis airport that has the same system where they go under the drop-off and departure area.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pretty sure city zoning or their requirements for underground air will require sprinkling, and that will add a tremendous cost to that project anytime you go underground. And if you're gonna sprinkle, you're probably gonna have to heat it. So you'll have some additional costs there as well. So just things that you should think about as you look at it. Those are going to be additional costs above just your normal construction.
Mr. Chairman, one more. The Skyway that we did going out in the parking lot, the idea is that we would go deep into the parking lot, and then you could just kind of walk from your parking spot to the closest point of entry and then walk inside all the way. And we could walk, and we could extend that out very far, you know, but that wasn't cheap either, you know, and that wasn't gonna be paid for with any FAA dollars, not 1 cent could come from the FAA, so. But it is, if we're gonna keep going south, their parking, that's another option that we just did something in an enclosed, area where it's heated, and you get a moving walkway, to get you into the building and takes you right inside, so. We could dust that off as well as another option of looking at that if we're just gonna expand south, so.
Nothing else? Meeting adjourned.